You don't get to keep the profits from that store all to yourself while the rest of us get nothing. Your stepmother and I have been patient, but patience has limits when it comes to family money. We've already started talking to some of the people you do business with. They understand how things should work in a real family. If you don't fix this by the time the reunion happens, we'll have to fix it for you. And don't think blocking numbers or changing passwords will stop what's coming. Hi, my name is Olivia Parker. I am 33 years old. The call had ended, but the word stayed. I set the phone down on the desk in the back office of the wellness store and stared at the inventory screen without seeing any of the numbers. 3 weeks before Memorial Day, and my father had decided the conversation could not wait. He had not asked how the store was doing. He had not asked about anything except control. I finished closing up and drove the short distance home through the quiet streets of the suburban neighbourhood outside Phoenix. The house was small, the one I had bought on my own 2 years earlier. No one else had keys. That fact had always felt like a small private victory. Tonight, it felt like the only solid ground left. The next morning, a supplier I had worked with since the first year emailed to say they needed to pause new orders while they re-evaluated accounts. I called. The woman who answered sounded uncomfortable and mentioned a family recommendation. She would not say whose. I thanked her and hung up before she could hear anything in my voice. That same afternoon, my stepmother Karen called the store line. She spoke as if we were already in the middle of a longer discussion. She said my father was worried about stability and that it would be simpler if I added them to the business accounts. When I asked what that would change, she said it was better discussed in person. Then she added that she was looking forward to the reunion and hoped I would not make things awkward for everyone else. I did not answer. 2 days later, the family group chat lit up. A message from my father contained a photograph of old bank statements from the year I opened the store. The caption underneath read, "Only some people forget where the help came from." I had never sent those statements to anyone. The only way they could have reached him was if Karen had kept copies from years ago or someone had gone through files I no longer kept at the store. I forwarded the message to my business partner Derek Hale and asked him to meet me before opening the next day. Then I changed every password for the business accounts and revoked 2 old authorised user cards I had forgotten existed. One of them had Karen's name on it from a time when I had been short-handed and needed someone to deposit checks. I had never used it after the first month. Derek arrived, early coffee in hand, and listened without interrupting while I showed him the supplier email and the group chat screenshot. He asked one question, whether I wanted him to start looking for new vendors immediately. I told him yes. He nodded once and said he would handle it before lunch. No lectures, no sympathy, just the next task. That was why I had brought him in 2 years earlier. By the end of that week, 2 more suppliers had sent similar re-evaluation emails. A regular customer who sometimes ordered in bulk for her own small clinic mentioned that my father had called her asking if she was still happy with the service. She had found the call odd but had not wanted to cause trouble. I thanked her and told her the store would continue as usual. The day before Memorial Day weekend, I met with Benjamin Cruz, the attorney Derek had recommended. I brought the supplier emails, the group chat screenshot and the old bank statement photo. Benjamin read through everything, once then asked how much of the original startup money had actually come from my father. I told him none. The small loan I had taken had been paid off in the first 18 months from store revenue. Benjamin made a note and said the records would help if anything moved to formal complaints. He also said changing the passwords had been the correct first step. That evening, I received another message in the group chat. This one was from Karen. It was a screenshot of a different set of records, these ones showing a transfer I had made to a new supplier account 6 months earlier. The caption said, "Only transparency matters in family." I did not reply. Instead, I screenshotted the entire thread and sent it to Benjamin with a short note asking him to keep it on file. The morning of Memorial Day, I drove to the store early to finish a few orders before the long weekend. Sophia Reyes, the part-time employee who had been with me for 3 years, was already there, restocking the display. She glanced up when I walked in and said a man had called the store line the night before asking for the owner's father. She had told him the owner was not in and taken a message. The name on the message slip was my father's. I folded the slip and put it in the drawer without comment. Sophia did not ask questions. She simply went back to the display. That silence felt like the first clean air I had breathed in weeks. By mid-morning, the group chat had gone quiet, but my phone showed 3 missed calls from my father and 2 from Karen. I did not return them. Instead, I sat in the back office and opened the folder of documents Benjamin had asked me to prepare. The list was short business license, lease, supplier contracts, bank statements for the last 2 years, and the original loan paperwork showing no family money involved. I scanned the last page again, even though I already knew what it said. The loan had been in my name only. The down payment on the store lease had come from savings I had built while working 2 jobs. A text arrived from Derek, new vendor confirmed for the main product line, terms better than the old ones. I typed back a single word, good. Then I closed the laptop and walked out to help Sophia finish the front displays before we closed early for the holiday. The streets outside were already filling with people heading to backyard gatherings. I locked the door behind us and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, keys in hand. The store looked the same as it had the day I signed the lease. The difference was that now I knew exactly who was willing to try to take pieces of it and who was not. I got into my car and drove home without turning on the radio. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. I set the keys on the counter and looked at the phone still sitting there. No new messages had come through in the last hour. The group chat remained silent. I poured a glass of water and carried it to the small table by the window. Outside, a neighbour was setting up folding chairs on the lawn. Somewhere farther down the block, music was already playing. Memorial Day had arrived exactly as it always did in this neighbourhood, loud, ordinary, and completely unaware of what had been happening in one small wellness store 3 streets over. I drank the water slowly. The documents were ready. The passwords were changed. The new vendor was in place. The next step would be whatever came after the reunion. I did not know yet what that would be, only that I would not be walking into it unprepared. To be continued, waiting for user to say continue story. Continue story. The morning after that quiet evening, Memorial Day arrived with the usual neighbourhood sounds drifting through the windows. I woke early, made coffee, and checked the store's security app out of habit. Everything was quiet there too. I dressed in simple clothes and drove to the rented pavilion in one of the city parks where my father had said the reunion would be held. When I arrived, a few early arrivals were already setting up tables. My father stood near the main table with my stepmother Karen beside him. He saw me and raised a hand in a gesture that looked like a wave but felt like a summons. I walked over. The conversation that followed was short and public enough that 2 of my cousins heard most of it. My father said the family needed to talk about the store before everyone else arrived. Karen added that transparency was important and that some people had been keeping secrets about money. I asked what secrets. Karen smiled in the small way she used when she wanted to look reasonable and said the old bank records spoke for themselves. She did not mention that she had kept copies without telling me. Before I could answer, Tyler Reid, my father's cousin, who had always been the quiet one at these things, walked up with a plate in his hand. He looked between us and asked if everything was okay. My father told him it was family business and that Tyler should enjoy the food. Tyler hesitated, then nodded and stepped away. That was the first time I saw the turning begin in real time. The rest of the morning passed in fragments. Relatives arrived. Conversations happened in small groups. Every time I tried to speak with someone I had known for years, either my father or Karen found a way to steer the talk back to stability and family helping family. One aunt asked me quietly if the store was in trouble. I told her it was not. She looked relieved but did not ask anything else. Around noon, I stepped away to the edge of the pavilion to check my phone. A new message had come through the group chat while I was there. It was from Karen again, this time with a forwarded email from one of the suppliers who had paused orders. The email said they had decided to work with more established family operations going forward. The supplier had never mentioned family before. I put the phone away and walked back inside. My father was talking to a small group near the food table. Karen stood a few feet away, watching me. When our eyes met, she gave the same small smile and turned back to the conversation she was in. I stayed another hour, spoke to the people who spoke to me first, and left before the afternoon game started. No one asked why I was going. On the drive home, my phone rang. It was Sophia Reyes. She said Karen had called the store line that morning while I was at the pavilion. Karen had asked how long Sophia had worked there and whether she had noticed anything unusual with the accounts. Sophia had told her she did not handle the accounts and that she needed to get back to a customer. Karen had not pushed, but the call had left Sophia uneasy enough to reach out on her day off. I thanked her for telling me and asked if she wanted to take the next few days off. She said no. She said she would be at the store when it reopened after the holiday. The call ended. I sat in the car in my driveway for several minutes before going inside. That evening, the group chat became active again. Tyler Reid sent a message asking if everything was all right between me and my father. My father replied before I could, saying some people needed time to understand that family came before individual control. Karen added a short note about how difficult it was when one person tried to keep everything separate. No one else in the chat responded. The messages sat there visible to everyone who had been added over the years. I screenshotted the thread and sent it to Benjamin Cruz with a note asking if it changed anything about the documents we had prepared. He replied an hour later that it did not change the facts, but that it showed a pattern worth documenting. He asked if I wanted to schedule another meeting after the holiday. I told him yes. The next morning I drove to the store even though it was closed. I wanted to check the inventory and make sure the new vendor arrangements Derek had set up were still holding. Everything looked normal inside. The displays were straight. The back office was as I had left it. I sat at the desk and opened the laptop to review the supplier contracts one more time. While I was there, another email arrived. This one was from a different supplier, one I had not heard from in weeks. It was short. They were terminating the relationship effective immediately and would not be accepting new orders. The reason listed was internal policy changes. There was no mention of family this time, but the timing made the connection clear. I forwarded the email to Derek and to Benjamin. Derek replied first. He said he had already lined up 2 backup options and would have contracts ready by the end of the week. Benjamin replied second. He said the pattern was now documented across 3 suppliers and that we should prepare a formal letter to any future parties who tried to interfere. He did not say who those parties might be. He did not need to. That afternoon I received one more call. It was from Tyler Reed. He sounded uncomfortable. He said my father had asked him to reach out and see if I was willing to sit down with the family before the weekend ended. Tyler added that he did not want to get in the middle of anything but that my father had made it sound urgent. I told Tyler I would handle it directly with my father. He thanked me and hung up quickly. I did not call my father. Instead, I drove back to the house, changed into work clothes, and went through every file I still had from the first year of the store. Most of it was digital now, but I kept a small box of paper records in the closet. I pulled the box out and went through it page by page. Near the bottom, I found a folder I had not opened in years. Inside were copies of the original loan documents and a single sheet with handwritten notes from a meeting I had with a potential investor who had ultimately passed. The notes were in my handwriting. On the back of the sheet, in different ink, someone had written a short list of questions about the investor and a reminder to keep family out of it for now. The handwriting on the back was Karen's. I sat on the floor with the paper in my hand for a long time. The note was not dramatic. It was practical. It was also proof that she had been involved in the early decisions and had chosen to stay quiet about it until now. The same records my father had sent in the group chat had been filtered. The parts that showed Karen's involvement had been removed. I photographed the sheet and sent it to Benjamin with a single sentence, "This was in my files." Karen's handwriting on the back. He replied that he would add it to the file and that we should discuss next steps when we met. The rest of the day passed without new messages. The group chat stayed silent. My father did not call. Karen did not call. Tyler did not call again. The neighbourhood was still full of holiday sounds, but inside the house it was quiet. I made dinner, ate it at the table by the window, and washed the single plate. Then I opened the laptop again and drafted an email to all current suppliers explaining that the store was under new management review and that all future communications should go through Derek or myself directly. I did not mention family. I did not need to. When the email was sent, I closed the laptop and sat back. The documents were ready. The passwords were changed. The new vendor was in place. The pattern was documented. The next step would be whatever came after the holiday weekend. I did not know yet what that would be, only that the quiet in the house was no longer the same quiet it had been 3 weeks earlier. My phone lit up with a new notification. It was not from the group chat. It was a calendar reminder I had set months ago for a routine store inspection. The date was 3 days from now. Under the reminder was a note I had written to myself, confirm with Derek on new supplier contracts. I deleted the old reminder and created a new one. This one simply said, meeting with Benjamin. Bring full file. Then I turned the phone face down on the table and left it there for the rest of the night. The days after Memorial Day passed in a strange kind of suspended quiet. The group chat stayed silent. My father did not call. Karen did not call. Tyler Reed sent one short message asking if I was all right and then went quiet when I replied that I was handling things on my own. I went to the store each morning, reviewed the new supplier contracts Derek had prepared, and worked with Sophia on the displays as if nothing outside the walls mattered. The routine felt deliberate. It was the only part of the day that still belonged entirely to me. On the 3rd morning after the holiday, Benjamin Cruz called. He had reviewed the full chain of supplier emails I had forwarded and the photograph of Karen's handwriting on the old notes. He said the pattern of interference was clear enough to support a formal notice if I wanted one. I told him to prepare it. He asked if I planned to deliver it in person or through him. I said, through him. I did not want another conversation that could be twisted later. That afternoon I received one more email. It was not from a supplier. It was from a small competitor 2 towns over who had once tried to buy the store when I first opened. The message was brief. They had been contacted by someone claiming to represent family interests and offering to discuss a partnership that would sideline me. The competitor had declined but thought I should know. The name attached to the offer was not my father's, but the timing and the language matched the same pattern. I forwarded that email to Benjamin as well. Then I called Derek and asked him to meet me at the store after closing. When he arrived, I showed him the message. He read it once and said the new vendors were already locked in with better terms than before. He asked if I wanted him to increase the security on the business accounts. I told him yes. We sat at the small desk in the back office and went through the updated access list together. Karen's name was already gone. My father's had never been on it. Derek added a second layer of approval for any large transfers and logged out. The next day I drove to the park pavilion where the reunion had been held. It was empty now, the tables folded and stacked under the shelter. I sat on one of the benches at the edge and waited. I had sent a single text to my father that morning. If you want to talk, meet me here at 4. He replied with only the time. No questions, no argument. He arrived with Karen. They walked across the grass together. My father sat on the bench across from mine. Karen stood beside him. The conversation that followed was the one I had been expecting since the first phone call 3 weeks earlier. My father started by saying the family could still fix this if I stopped being stubborn. Karen said the store had always been meant to be a family asset and that my refusal to share control had forced them to protect everyone's interests. I asked what interests they were protecting. Karen said the records showed contributions that had never been acknowledged. I pulled the photograph of her handwriting from my phone and held it out. I asked why she had written keep family out of it for now on the back of my own notes if the store was always supposed to be shared. Karen's expression did not change. She said some things were said in the heat of early decisions and did not reflect the full picture. My father said I was focusing on the wrong details and that the real issue was my refusal to let the family have a voice. I told him the family already had a voice. It was the one I had used when I paid back every cent of the original loan without asking for help. It was the one Derek and Sophia used when they showed up every day and did the work. It was not the voice that called suppliers behind my back or kept old records to use later. Karen stepped forward then. She said I was making a mistake that I would regret when the store faced real trouble. She said blood meant something even if I pretended it did not. I stood up. I told them both that I was done pretending. The notice from Benjamin would arrive by the end of the week. It would state clearly that any further contact with suppliers, customers or employees regarding the store would be treated as interference. I said I would not be at any future gatherings and that the group chat could continue without me. Then I walked back to my car. My father called my name once as I reached the edge of the grass. I did not turn around. The drive home was quiet. When I pulled into the driveway, the neighbour across the street was mowing his lawn. Everything looked ordinary. Inside the house, I blocked both numbers. I changed the store's main contact line to route through Derek during business hours. I sent a short message to Sophia and to Tyler Reid explaining that I would no longer be responding to family discussions about the business. Sophia replied that she understood and would be at work the next day. Tyler did not reply. The formal notice went out 3 days later. Benjamin handled the delivery. 2 suppliers who had paused orders reached out within the week to ask if the situation had been resolved. Derek handled those conversations. Both accounts were reinstated with updated terms that no longer involved any outside recommendations. The competitor who had received the partnership offer sent a short note wishing the store well and saying they would not be pursuing anything further. The group chat remained active for a few more days with messages from other relatives asking if everything was all right. When no one answered the questions directly, the messages stopped. The chat went silent. I kept going to the store every morning. The displays stayed full. New customers came in because the products were consistent and the staff knew what they were talking about. Derek took on more of the ordering. Sophia handled the front with the same steady presence she had always had. The numbers improved slowly but steadily. There was no dramatic recovery, only the absence of the interference that had been pulling against the work. 3 weeks after the notice, Tyler Reid called the store line. Sophia transferred the call to me in the back office. He said he had seen the full thread of messages my father had sent to the suppliers. He had not known about the bank records or the handwriting until Karen had shown them to him privately after the reunion. He said he did not agree with what they had done and that he would not be at any more family events where the store was discussed. I thanked him for telling me. He asked if there was anything he could do. I told him there was not. The call ended. I did not hear from my father or Karen again. The silence was not peaceful. It was simply the absence of demands. Some days I still checked the group chat out of habit before remembering I had left it. The store continued without them. The house remained the same small place I had bought on my own. The quiet inside it no longer felt like something I was waiting to end. I learned that shared blood does not create automatic loyalty. It creates an assumption that can be used as leverage until someone decides the leverage is no longer worth the cost. I had spent years giving the benefit of every doubt because the alternative felt like losing the only family I had left. The alternative was not loss. It was the removal of a weight I had not realised I was carrying until it was gone. The store is still there. Derek and Sophia are still there. The new suppliers are steadier than the old ones. I go in each morning, review the numbers, and close each evening without checking my phone for messages that will not come. The independence is not loud. It is simply the fact that every decision now belongs to the people who actually do the work. Thank you for listening to my story. If you were in my position after discovering how far they went to control what I built, would you have tried one last conversation or cut contact immediately?